Hello and welcome back to the 7 Minutes Podcast. This is going to be episode 13, all about the Metroid series.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Before we get into that, though, a few items. First of all, identifying ourselves. I'm Zack.
I'm Angela.
I am Robert.
And the three of us together are the Metroid Talkers. Before we start talking about Metroid, though, we do customarily begin by talking about what we've been playing since the last time we recorded. I'll go ahead and kick us off. Surprise, surprise, playing a fair bit of Final Fantasy XIV. But also, I'm sure this is going to get applause from Angela. I am done with Greedfall.
Oh,
Finished that off.
Thank God.
And I opted, more applause incoming, I opted not to play the DLC
All
for
right.
Greedfall. So Angela's long nightmare is over. And the next Spider software game is not out yet. So a reprieve, if not, onto a paradise of no Spider software games for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fine if the characters weren't so ugly. Really awful to look at.
Okay, well, you don't have to. That's fine. And in Final Fantasy XIV, I don't have a ton to say. I've been, when not questing alongside Angela, I've been leveling up a bunch of character classes, jobs that I hadn't previously gotten into. Most of the way done with that, actually. I've only got 4 jobs left to finish off leveling. And I also had an old friend that I used to play this game with return to the game after a hiatus of, I guess, 5 or 6 years. So that's been cool, too. I guess that's really all I have to go over.
Yeah, I finally got off the free trial of Final Fantasy XIV. I think what actually was the catalyst was that Zack has this really cool armor right now, and I can get it too, but you can only get it through PvP, and you can't do PvP if you're on the free trial. So I think that was what the catalyst was to get me off the free trial and actually buy the game.
But we haven't moved towards getting you that armor yet.
Not yet. Yeah, so that's mainly what I've been playing. A lot of Mario Kart Tour. I finally have the opportunity to get Ninja Shy Guy, which I missed out on the first time. Or Shy Guy, parenthetically, Ninja. As he's really titled in the game.
We can call him Ninja Shy Guy.
He would prefer it.
And so I've been playing a lot of that. But actually, I wasn't expecting this. Google, the latest Google Doodle is... it's like a full-blown, it's not really like an RPG. It's almost like a sports adventure game with 16-bit or whatever, 32-bit styled graphics. I wasn't expecting it to be as long as it was, or really as fun as it was. You play as this cat named Lucky, who it's supposed to be like a kind of a... It's basically the Olympics, but they're not calling it that. They call it something else. But you play as Lucky the cat, and you have to go and you have to play 6 or 8 different sports. And everything is controlled with the arrow buttons on the keyboard and your space bar. And your space bar, you take different actions, and you can talk to people, and there are people around the island who have different problems, and you can help them with the problems. And you have to... challenge each master of the 6 or 8 different sports. And then once you beat all the masters, then you are like the master Olympian, but not Olympian on the island. It was actually really fun. I hesitate to compliment Google on anything, but that was actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah. I'd seen it described as like a JRPG. And so I think that's just because of the styling of it, and you spend a lot of time walking around a town talking to villagers.
Yeah, because there's no leveling system. There's nothing like that. So I hesitate to call it an RPG, but
it's kind of like Capcom's Adventures in the Magic Kingdom, which is an NES game where your character went around Disneyland talking to people, and then there was like a Haunted Mansion themed event and I think a Pirates themed event and so forth.
Okay.
What have I been doing? I know I played Skyward. Beat that.
You already beat it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really good.
When he puts his mind to it.
Anyway. Interesting because unless I'm insane, I'm almost 100% positive that my original file for Skyward on Wii was like 150 hours. It was at least over 100.
Yeah, I put in 135 in my file.
Yeah, so see, mine was 150.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 30 hours on this game.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is. All I know is that it took a fraction of the time. But regardless, we had discussed in a previous podcast, our least favorite Zelda games. I don't know what I was thinking, even considering Skyward Sword being a least favorite. That's a really good Zelda game. I don't care what anyone at the table might have to say about that. That's right.
Well, I've heard they've, in this new version, they've done a bit to speed up the absolutely terrible intro to the game. Like, more is skippable. The dialogue flows more quickly. There are segments with chatty sword lady that are now optional instead of mandatory, right? So they've done a fair bit to streamline what everyone called out as the worst parts of Skyward Sword.
Yeah, I'm realizing GameStop TV has poisoned my mind because I'm not sure how to pronounce her name now. I call her Fi. The person on GameStop TV said Fee. I'm sticking with Fi. I don't really care if I'm right or wrong. But anyway, Fi is nowhere near as chatty as she used to be. I think that one of the side effects of the Wii era was that Nintendo had this whole new crowd of people playing. And so they were like hypersensitive about, we've got all these new players. Because I actually played the original Skyward for a bit before the new one came out, just to refresh my memory. And that intro is pretty drawn out. Like, at one point, one of the instructors asks Link to come up and talk to them and then fetch something off the roof. I think it's like one of those cat creatures. And that whole sequence is massively streamlined. Like, on the Wii version, you get up onto the roof and there's a box, and it's obvious you need to push the box. But, in case it's not obvious, the teacher's like yelling up, "Do you see the box up there?" It's like, why don't you come get it yourself, man? You apparently know every inch of what's up here, but...
This is good to know, because I do specifically remember the cat segment as kind of poisoning the game for me.
Yeah, that's like, it's nothing like it was. And then I do think that the non-motion controls, the button and stick version of everything, are done pretty well, all things considered. It's not perfect. I think that in some ways it's a little clunky. Like, for example, you now have free control over the camera. You can move it 360 degrees, like most Zelda games, most 3D Zelda games. But in this one, you have to hold L down, and then you can move the right stick to look around, because the right stick is otherwise how you swing a sword. So, I mean, that compromise makes sense, but then part of me was thinking, well, why can't it be the right shoulder button? And then there's some use of like R3 and L3 that I'm not a huge fan of. Like, particularly swimming. Swimming's way better than it was because you don't have to like aim at the screen. But then in order to do Link's like spin dash, you have to click L. So like you're aiming and then clicking with it, and that's a little weird. But otherwise it works. But then the caveat to this is you can play it with the motion controls. And I actually think the motion controls are really good in Skyward and a big part of that experience. And now they're way more accurate than before because you're using the Joy-Con, which are more precise. So it was good. I thought this version of Skyward was good. And one last bit, they got the text scroll right. So I was laughing because I wrote about this on Nintendo Joe. I do a Sunday feature called Bits and Bytes, and I had mentioned that in Skyward they did what Grezzo did not when they did the 3D versions of the 3DS versions of Majora and Ocarina, which is they maintained if it's not the same font, it's very similar to the font that's in Skyward for the HD version. And the way the text scrolls is also paid attention to. If you look at Ocarina and Majora on 3DS, it has this ugly, generic sans serif font that doesn't look anything like the font from Ocarina or Majora. And then all of the intentional text scrolling is removed. So, like, I think the most obvious the example that comes into my head is Ganon at the end of the game, when he's saying, "curse you," to like 10 different people. But in the original version of it, it's slowly kind of coming out. It's supposed to be dramatic because there's no voice acting. Well, when Grezzo redid the games, now I blame Grezzo, but it could have also just been the localization team. But they got rid of all of that text scroll. Everything just comes out at the same pace. So that's a small detail, but I think an important detail that people don't always think about with some of these remakes. So, yeah, good game.
Cool. I don't believe you, but I appreciate the information about your experience. I did some fact checking while you were talking, and I this might not be conclusive as to what's supposed to be canonically correct in the English localization. The Japanese name is Fi.
What is Fi?
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel better.
And I also checked out howlongtobeat.com because I was like, I know Zelda games can get long, but 135 hours seems ridiculous. You guys might just be outliers because looking at the Wii version of Skyward Sword, the average completionist length is 58 hours, and just doing like the main story or whatever is more like 38 or 40 hours.
Yeah, see, I don't know what the two of us were doing.
Me neither.
Although, I don't know, maybe I extended the length of the playtime for myself because, like, with Wii games, there's so many of them that have motion controls, and I like to play games. I lie down on my side in front of the television on the ground. Mm-hmm. And so I found creative ways of being able to maintain that position while still doing the motion controls for countless games. But it doesn't always work very smoothly.
Sure.
So maybe that was an extra 50 hours right there of like being this blob on the ground. Like, I can make it work for the triangle.
That seems unlikely. I mean, it doesn't seem, I didn't get that far in Skyward, but it didn't seem like that demanding a game in terms of like inputs, right? So I can't see that holding you back too hard. You probably were just luxuriating in the wonderful world of Zelda.
One last point, because I will probably never talk about Skyward again.
Please.
That game has some of the most brilliant, just like visual design elements. Like, I get it's a Wii game, but there's so many areas you go to that are just stunningly beautiful. Like, after you meet the water dragon, it's the entrance to the ancient cistern. It's this beautiful waterfall, and it's just like this tall, like you're in kind of like there's like kind of mountains surrounding you, and there's water. It's beautiful, and there's all these areas that are like that. And then when you are in, I'm going to mispronounce this probably, but like I think it's Lanairu Desert, you have the time stone that's on top of this boat that you're in. And so the time stone is transporting you back to when the desert was ocean, but you're within a sphere of this time bubble. So you're seeing part of the desert as you're on the boat as ocean. And then around the bubble of the time stone that you're in, the field of the time stone that you're in, it's still sand. Like, it's just mind-bogglingly brilliant what they did. It's just such a shame that you don't have the properly interconnected overworld. And, there's other limitations because of the Wii, but what Nintendo was able to get done was just, oh man, just visually it's incredible.
All right, I won't fight you on that. As mentioned at the outset, we're here to talk about the Metroid series, which at least used to be called one of the big three, along Mario and Zelda.
As far as I'm concerned, it's still part of the big three.
I kind of feel like to some extent, like Mario Kart and Smash Brothers are both at this point more central franchises for Nintendo. That's not to take anything away from Metroid, and certainly it's been like a high prestige series for Nintendo for a long time. A couple of games in the series, namely Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, often get tossed around as names of like some of the greatest games ever made. And the first game was released on the Famicom Disk System August 6th, 35 years ago, 1986. So, in honor of that, and just because, we often talk about Nintendo games on this podcast, we're here to talk about the Metroid series. So we're going to just kind of go through the series in chronological order and discuss it. First, we start at the beginning with how all of us were introduced to Metroid.
I was introduced through Robert. The first Metroid game I ever played was Prime. I did not play the first Metroid until later on the Game Boy Advance. Those classic re-releases of NES games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was my first exposure to Metroid.
So my first exposure was Prime. I know I especially talk a lot about Nintendo Power having this massive influence on what we would play growing up, and Prime was massively hyped, just like a lot of other big Nintendo projects. But I think, I don't know, it's an aspect of video games that is just, I don't think it's quite the same anymore, where like almost everything that comes out now is beautiful. Like it's a lot, like I don't know what the percentages of games that are running in like Unreal Engine is, or even Unity, but it's high because it cuts back production costs. You don't have to create a game engine. But that also kind of means there's a something of a level of uniformity, at least in terms of you're going to have this baseline visual quality now. Whereas, like, pretty much everything up to right about around the GameCube era, GameCube, PS2, Xbox, I think every studio, for the most part, is making their own game engines. And so when a studio really knocks one out of the park, you would notice it back in the day. So Metroid Prime looked incredible. Like, there are a lot of good-looking GameCube games, but that one just stood out so much. And even though, we had every console Nintendo has made growing up, from the NES forward, I never played Metroid until GameCube. It just was never on my radar. I never paid attention to it. And then, there's that huge gap between Super Metroid and I think Prime. I think the last game before Metroid Prime came out would have been Super Metroid, which would have been, at that point, not super long ago, but it was years ago at that point. So the hype for me was huge. I wanted to play Prime badly, and that was my first experience. But then Metroid Fusion came out at the same time. I can't honestly totally remember if I got both games at the same time. And I know I got Prime. I don't know if I got Fusion. But that was my first exposure.
All right. And for me, my first was definitely the original Metroid. One of a bunch of games that were featured heavily in Nintendo Power. It definitely wasn't one of my earliest NES games, but I did get it. I'd never spent that much time with it. And then kind of repeated the pattern with the second Metroid game and didn't pick up Super Metroid. So I kind of fell out from the series and only ended up really revisiting it in more detail later.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and talk about that first Metroid game. Angela, you said you first encountered it on the GBA, kind of like, I don't know if they're called like NES Classics or whatever, but
I think they were called NES Classics. But yeah, died a lot.
Yeah.
Never ended up beating it. But that game has a very unique feeling. I feel like a lot of NES games have this kind of strange, almost like eerie feel about them, depending on the game. Even like the Spider-Man game that was on the NES has this really bizarre feeling to it. Metroid has a little of that going on, but it also has almost like a feeling of horror. I don't really know what it is about it that gives me that sense with that particular game. It might be like the darkness, like the dark backgrounds. I don't know. Of course, some of the character design kind of pulls from, sci-fi and a little bit of horror, but it's a very interesting game. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of the original Zelda. Moving from screen to screen, the feeling of like just trying to figure out where you're going. It's a unique game. It's fun. It is difficult. But I actually feel like I should go back and try and finish that game because it's been a long time since I played it. I had to have been a teenager, maybe early 20s when I played that, but it has been a very long time.
Do you know how far you got?
I don't even remember anymore.
It can be hard to get your bearings in that game. Like, everyone who starts is going to understand that they have to move left, get the morph ball, start exploring. And then it's not that long before it kind of feels like the map is opening up in a lot of ways and you're not really sure the right way to proceed. So it's and that tracks with my own experience. It's pretty easy to kind of like not really know where to go.
Yes.
And part of the experience of, like an old NES game is there's a little bit of uncertainty about like, am I just not executing this correctly, or am I not supposed to go this way?
Yes.
Like that's always, I think even in Super Metroid, I think that there's a bit of that.
I actually feel like a lot of modern games have lost, and maybe some people would actually not like that confusion. Like, am I not doing this right, or am I just not supposed to go here yet? I don't know why. I just feel like a lot of modern games don't really have that. I don't really, when I've played a lot of games like let's say Days Gone or The Last of Us or something, I don't really get that sense of like, should I even be here yet, or do I need to come back to this later? It just feels like newer games don't really have a lot of that kind of just drop you in the middle of the game and you figure it out kind of thing.
Yeah. Or they're clearer about signaling that you're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Like in I know we bring up Witcher 3 every episode, but like the levels of the enemies are clearly telegraphed with numbers over their heads. Same thing happens in like the modern Assassin's Creed games where you just like, hey, this is a level 70 monster, so just so you know, you should come back in 20 more levels, right?
Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
You've pointed out, like, don't go near that thing because it will kill you.
Yeah.
And you can see that there's a marker indicating stay away from this for now.
Xenoblade is like that, where you're like the first giant field you get into, there's like these lower level monsters that you can tell you're supposed to be beating up, and then you can see there's these like giant brutes that you're just like, oh, I probably shouldn't go anywhere near that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think Xenoblade might take some cues from MMOs, because I've heard that compared to Final Fantasy 12, which has the same thing of like, hey, there's these tiny little cactus monsters, but also this level 40 Tyrannosaurus Rex patrolling around the same area. And that I think that does come from MMOs. But yeah.
I could see the horror aspect that Angela's talking about with the first Metroid. I mean, I believe it's openly known that Alien influenced the development of Metroid, and Alien definitely has some horror elements to it.
That's got to be where Ridley's name comes from, right? Ridley Scott?
Yeah.
That would be my guess.
I mean, it would be a heck of a coincidence otherwise. That first Metroid, it's definitely good.
It's a little hard to get into. You have to really be in the mood for that game.
It makes me question one of my kind of philosophies that I have about games, which is when I read modern game reviewers talking about older games, and they piss and moan about, it's either too hard or, it's not, like basically it's not good anymore. And I hate that talk. Like, I just think you just have to get into the mindset of playing it, where it's like, stop thinking of whatever ridiculous modern game you're playing where every convenience is given to you, and appreciate the game for what it is. That said, I have not beaten the original Metroid yet. I have trouble getting into it, and I don't know what it is about the game where I just kind of get stuck, and I don't feel the compulsion to keep moving forward. I think I've barely touched the first Metroid. I've definitely like started it and gotten to like, who knows, like, not very far, and then just stopped playing. But I can appreciate what it did in terms of creating that. I mean, now it's this, it's basically the genre of the indie game, which is, the idea of the Metroidvania. But the whole concept of you don't have stages, you have this giant world that you get to explore. Did this game have a map? Or was it like Zelda where people had to make their own map?
I don't think the first one had a map. I think that, we'll jump ahead a little. Super Metroid has a map. I think Metroid 2 may or may not. I can't recall. But I think Zero Mission is the first time that like this story got a map to explore.
Well, it's interesting because that's part of the game right there, right? I mean, I think ignoring, like with the original Zelda, like the maps people would make for themselves, like that's part of that game's experience. And if you're not, I'm not saying you have to make the map, but I think that if you're not engaging with it that way, that you're not maybe doing it correctly. I mean, I think it's an analog thing. And I think maybe people now are especially kind of reluctant to embrace analog when they're in this kind of digital game experience. But if you go back to some of the older game consoles, they had actual physical overlays that you would put onto a TV screen. I'm forgetting which console I'm referencing right now, but
at least the Vectrex did that.
The Vectrex, but there are other game systems
the
too.
Older ones, like pre-Atari 2600
that's
systems.
Right.
Yeah,
they would give you these like plastic mats that you'd put over part of your screen. So it's like, this analog element that's part of the digital. And I think that making a map is in the same kind of vein. I mean, instruction manuals would actually come, many of them with a little section in the back of 1 or 2 pages that would say notes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, take notes while you're playing, whether you're writing down a password or even just saying, okay, you got to remember to go back and do whatever. So I think Metroid probably is a better experience if you engage with it on that level. But I think ultimately I'm being lazy and not ascribing to my own philosophy of get into the mindset to play it.
Well, and there's no inconsistency there. Like you can say simultaneously that you need to be able to meet Metroid on its own terms in order to get the most out of it, and also say like I don't feel like doing that.
Mm-hmm.
There like this is true for a lot of old games. Like I remember it being kind of a revelation for me when I went back to the original Castlevania game and tried to like play it for score and play it for like clearing the game without dying, to treat it more like an arcade game. And it really opened my eyes about like how that game was designed, and like things that I was noticing and appreciating that I didn't appreciate when I was just trying to like kind of mash my way through and get to the end. But, I had that spark of interest that made me do that with Castlevania. If I hadn't felt that spark of interest, like it's no good to just say like, well, I need to take it on its own terms, right? You need to have the energy and interest in doing that.
Yeah.
I also have never beaten the original Metroid. I think I probably got farther than Angela.
Definitely farther than me.
But I think I got to Kraid, but I've never beaten it. And I don't know, like I kind of like part of it is just I would lose interest a little bit. This is going to be a recurring comment. I really don't like bomb jumps. Which for anyone who's not familiar and is yet still listening to a 35th anniversary Metroid podcast, bomb jumps are when you put Samus into the morph ball form and then you lay bombs, because when the bombs go off, they will knock Samus's morph ball form up in the air, and you can actually chain them to get into small passages that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get into. I find it really kind of just obnoxious. I've never been able to get the rhythm of it. And so I had a pattern that was established with this first Metroid game of getting to the point where it seemed like I needed to do bomb jumps to proceed, and just being like, forget it. I just play something else.
I will agree with you there. I don't really care for the bomb jump mechanic.
It's never bugged me.
Yeah, it's it's okay. I might have an easier time than Zack in figuring out the timing. I just still don't really like it very much as a mechanic.
I was proud of myself the other day. I will quickly touch on this because we're going in order, but I was playing the Metroid Prime trilogy on Wii, where all of the games allow you to flick the Wii remote up, and that lets you do the jump without actually having to use a bomb. So that makes a lot of the puzzles easier in the first 2 Metroid Prime games. And in Metroid Prime 1, there's a section where you have to do like a double bomb jump to get up to the I think it's an energy tank. I was like, I'm not doing it. I'm like, I'm going to do it the right way.
All right. Well, that actually makes me think I might someday go back to Metroid Prime, because that was also a game where I got to like the bomb jumps and was like, no. I'm just never going to beat a Metroid game. Before moving on from Metroid 1, though, I do want to like also second the horror origins of Metroid. I've heard like the creature designs in the original were influenced by Geiger. Also, like H.R. Geiger, who is like the creature. Well, he's not just this, but the creature designer for Alien.
Oh, there's something we're not talking about in the first Metroid that I guess is worth mentioning. But that concept of people playing that game for the first time when it came out and not knowing the main character was a woman. I love that novelty. Like, I love Samus as a character because Samus is a woman, and there's no emphasis on the fact that she's a woman. It's like she gets to just be this strong, badass character, and it's just part of who she is, that she's a woman, but it's never like focused on. And it starts
I don't
with that
know
first game.
if that second part of what you're saying is true, really. Like, even
She's
in the
first,
the not focused on her being a woman part, because even in the first game,
other M, but...
no, not even that. Like, even in the first game, when you get to the end, right, your reward is seeing her in Tankini.
What I mean is, it's like, I mean, obviously there's a little bit of that going on, right? Every game has some version where she has her armor removed, but my point is just that it's not about, like, you know, she is woman, hear her roar, like some of that kind of crappy marketing that you see in a lot of, like, woman-focused either games or media. It's like she gets to be this strong female character, and it doesn't pander. Now, granted, in an NES game, it's going to be pretty hard to pander, and the mindset's different, but the fact that Nintendo was like, okay, everyone's going to play this game, and you're going to get all the way to the end, and then you find out, oh, by the way, you were playing as a woman the whole time. And then you realize, wow, it didn't make any difference in terms of my connection to the character, which I think is interesting in terms of, like, representation, if you think about it, because it's like I was able to connect the whole time, and it didn't matter that she was a woman. And then, yeah, I think that's one of the cool aspects of not just Metroid's history, but even Nintendo's history, because that's 35 years ago. And they did that.
Can you imagine getting to the end of a Zelda game and your reward is seeing Link shirtless because you completed it quickly?
I'm sure there are some members of the fandom potentially at this table who wouldn't complain.
Both of you can just shut up. I mean, we'll talk about this more as we move on through the games.
It's at the very least going to be unavoidable when we get to Other M.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that for the most part, Samus just happens to be a woman. I feel like that's very true of the Metroid Prime games, especially the first one. Like, the fact that she's a woman doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. She just is. You know, I don't want to really get too in the weeds on this particular topic of representation for a number of reasons, but as a woman who's grown up playing games, representation is not something I've ever had an issue with. The person I'm playing as, the protagonist I'm playing as, does not need to be a woman, doesn't need to be a brunette, doesn't need to look like they could possibly be Hispanic or specifically Mexican. Like, it doesn't matter. And in fact, and I know I've mentioned this in a previous episode, most of my favorite game characters, my favorite game character is Link, and he's a man. Most of the characters that I have actually found most interesting and relatable have been men, just because of their personality and different things about their character. And so with Samus, I really like the fact that, Other M aside, the representation of Samus has never been really focused on her gender, really anything about her experience has never been, like, gendered. It's just she happens to be a woman in a suit of armor doing what she does.
From my perspective, there are, like, gendered elements that come into things, even if you're just talking about thematically. And I think this is something that inherits from the Alien franchise, but, like, there is, like, this kind of mother-child relationship that
with the Metroid.
Yeah. So there are elements like that, but where I do think I agree with you, and maybe agree with you both, is that it doesn't feel like the kind of stories that the Metroid games tell or the adventures Samus has are constrained by the fact that she's a woman, or that the game is being marketed with that in mind. Mm-hmm. Again, with the exception of Other M, maybe.
Yeah, like, I played Horizon Zero Dawn. I actually play tested that game. You couldn't get me to pay for that game. And a big part of the problem I had, like, I didn't dislike Aloy, like, her character design very much. I mean, the whole game was just really not for me. I didn't think she was awful, but there's just that game is constantly hitting you with like matriarchy. It's men. It's evil men that destroyed the world. And it's going to be a woman who saves it. And I'm just sitting there, playing this game. And I'm like, okay, I mean, there are a lot of shitty women out in the world too. Like, it just felt so heavy-handed, two-dimensional, one-dimensional. Just a kind of typical, like warmongering, violent men destroyed the world. And it was man's ambition that got us to the shitty place we're at now. Man regressed because of the actions of men. But it's woman and women and the matriarchy that's going to save the world. And that's modern storytelling that I just don't care for.
Is it that you don't like those themes, or that it was handled with the subtlety of like a Facebook?
It's like, it's like, hitting you with 2 sacks of pennies in the eyes, like my mom would say. Like, it's, I'm sure those types of stories can be told well. Can think of a couple pieces of media where, the more like a women-focused society or whatever is told fine. But that game was just nauseating. I was done with it. Now, again, that was the playtest. My playtest experience. I don't really know if the final game ended up being a little different, but
I'm sure you'll see me play it at some point because I got it for free.
I started playing Horizon, and I have not felt like it's as heavy-handed with the matriarchy stuff as what Angela describes, but she did play it while it was being being developed still. So I don't know if maybe it was different or if I'm just not noticing it as much. But even with Horizon, I don't think it's handled as elegantly as with Metroid.
Yeah.
But anyway, we want to touch on all the games, so...
Yeah. Motion to move on to Metroid 2.
Yeah, which, I mean, we're probably not going to have a lot to say about that one.
Have either of you played the original Game Boy version of Metroid 2?
I've tried playing it. I've gotten just as far with that one as the first Metroid.
I got farther with Metroid 2 than I did with the original Metroid. And maybe in part because it was on a Game Boy, which meant I had more context in which I could play it, and the alternatives weren't as compelling. I can't imagine going back to the Game Boy version of the game. I don't mind the black and white. It frankly adds like a pretty cool atmosphere. Like Angela was saying, even just like the black backgrounds in Metroid heighten the horror vibe. Mm-hmm. And the monochrome Metroid 2 also heightens the horror vibe. And so does the just the claustrophobic display. Like that's part of why I wouldn't want to go back to it. But Samus takes up so much of the playable screen. So you can't see as far in front of you. So in a sense, it's kind of like going through a dark cave and not being able to see more than a couple of feet in front of your face. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of cool. I do really like the way the structure of Metroid 2 deviates from the original, where you basically have a kill list and you can see that kill list go down. And I also like that in a way, it's a more linear game. Like you're going from one area, descending to another area, descending to another one, rather than doing as much crisscrossing back and forth around like one central map, which became, with Super Metroid, kind of became like the norm, since that followed more in the original's footsteps.
Yeah, like I think of all the classic NES versions of like the big three of Nintendo's franchises, Mario, Zelda, Metroid. Metroid had a more interesting or a different path than Mario and Zelda, because with Mario, our Mario 2 was the reskin Doki Doki Panic, which is plays significantly differently than the first Mario. Zelda 2 plays a lot differently than the original Zelda, but they were both on NES. Whereas Metroid gets its sequel and it's a Game Boy game. So not only is it a deviation just like the others, but it's a deviation and probably also owing to the platform it's on. Because, I'm assuming that there were limitations with the Game Boy that are going to be significantly more than on the NES. And I wonder how much that colored the design of Metroid 2.
Yeah, it helps them lean into the horror aspects of Metroid, like the claustrophobic isolation, but it also makes it harder to go back to. It's just not, it doesn't feel as good to play as some of those other second generation Nintendo titles.
I also wonder too, though, if maybe part of the reason it has less of a focus on the backtracking, because that's a huge part of Metroidvania type of games. I wonder if that's just because of the platform, because the assumptions like, well, they're going to be playing on the go. There might not be remembering as well. Oh, I was here. I need to go back to this point. So, like, that's one of the things I miss about not having a dedicated handheld anymore is that, I mean, even by the time you get to the DS era, it's not quite the same. But the entire Game Boy era, a lot of the design principles are based on people are playing, they're playing on the go, and it's more limited hardware. So it creates these confines that produce different types of games, I think. And so Metroid 2 feels like it's a result of that.
Maybe. So I can definitely point to handheld games where you can see what came from technical limitations. I don't know if like the kind of overarching structure of Metroid 2 is one of those things.
Well, I say this too because it's early on in the Game Boy era, right? Metroid 2, I think, is one of the first Game Boy games, isn't it? Or at least it's from that kind of initial era?
Not that early. I think it was like a couple of years in. Because
at that point, they're still sort of experimenting, right? Like, you know, no one's really done this the way they're doing it before. And anyway, I think Metroid 2, the remake is pretty good, but we'll get to that later. But
both of them.
Oh.
Yeah, here we go. Anyway, moving on now to Super Metroid, or Metroid 3, as it is canonically considered.
All right.
It's another one we didn't play. Not till later.
Not till later.
All right, but you did eventually play it.
I'm going to speak sacrilegiously and say I actually think of the Super Metroid style 2D Metroid games. There's Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero. I actually put Super Metroid at the bottom of that list because my first exposure to this type of the Metroid game was Fusion. But regardless, for Super Metroid, I have played a good chunk of it. I actually got into it, like, you know, meaning like I was in the right head space for it. I remapped some of the buttons so it felt less alien to me. That was one of the problems I had when I first played it. I was like, this doesn't feel right in terms of the button layout, especially after playing 2 games like it with just 2 buttons, you know, as opposed to the 4 face buttons.
Yeah.
So after remapping the buttons and getting it to where it felt right to me, it is a good game. I mean, that intro is awesome. That's probably one of the best intros on the Super Nintendo.
I also just like the way Samus looks in that game. I like the way her armor looks. I feel like the colors, it's been a little while since I played it, but I feel like the colors are very rich in that game. It's a great looking game. I really like everything about the visual aesthetic of Super Metroid. Yeah.
How far did either of you get in Super Metroid?
I didn't get far. Robert definitely got farther than me.
Yes, it's been a while though. I can't remember exactly what point I got to.
Okay. Did you get to like Shine Sparking?
I don't know I think I got to Shine Sparking.
Okay. I mean, I could talk about my own experience. This is the oldest Metroid title I've actually beaten, gotten to the end on. I say like the intro on like that space station didn't make as much of an impact on me.
It's awesome.
I'm not saying you have to dislike it, man. It just like doesn't grab me as much.
Who isn't grabbed by the sight of Ridley appearing out of nowhere?
You know,
that's such an awesome moment. Like, you get into the station, there's all these dead people, it's creepy, and you're like, you know, you're moving along, and like, there's right there a good example of the horror element popping into the series. Like, it definitely, I think horror is throughout most of the series, but we can touch on that a little later. But here it's very prominent. You know, you enter, what's going on? You know, there's a distress signal that's been sent out, and then you get to that little baby Metroid in the container. I think it's a baby Metroid, right? That you see at the beginning of the game.
I think so.
And then out of the background, Ridley. It's like, oh, that's so cool.
Ridley's freaky. I like Ridley a lot. I think his design is really cool. I think he is perfectly frightening. He's got this really good balance of like frightening and cool. And I think he makes such a good antagonist for Samus. And I also think it's interesting that, you know, when you think of, you know, an antagonist for a human or even human-like character, you know, like Mario and Bowser, Link and Ganondorf, DK's a monkey, but like, you know, DK and King K. Rool. But with Samus, it's this weirdo, like, alien dragon thing. You know, she's a human, but her main rival antagonist is Ridley. I find that really, really cool. I think that's just a really neat dynamic and another unique thing about Metroid.
Super Metroid is the only game in which I like Ridley. I wish they would stop bringing him back. He feels to me like, you know, because he's just like a mini boss basically in the first Metroid game.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes back in Super Metroid and he just, for some reason, they keep bringing him back and kind of giving him more prominent places in like the canon. And it feels just like he's not like he should have just been like a one-off heavy that maybe came back again. The fact that he's so central in the Metroid lore now would be like if it turned out Bebop was now running the Technodrome or had been responsible for turning the turtles into turtles. Like there's just no look. I think it's possible to like promote kind of like a heavy or like just whatever henchman into a more interesting role. Like certainly the Metal Gear Solid games do that with Revolver Ocelot, for example. But for Ridley, I don't get it. I don't understand why people. I get it. He looks like a dragon dinosaur thing, right? So that's kind of cool, right? But nah.
What a terrible take.
But this is to be expected. Anything that most people think is cool, Zack can't stand.
Yeah, so like if Mother Brain just kept coming back, Zack would like that because it's this goofy brain in a jar.
Yeah. Or if Krang. Am I thinking of that guy? The guy who looks he's like in his red undies. Or who's that?
Yeah, so the robot body has the weird red undies.
Yeah. So that's this kind of thing where Zack would be like, "Yes, give me more robot undie Krang."
This is we can move past this slander. But like I will agree with Robert. Not that I think Super Metroid is the least of those games. I think it's the best of them, but the controls are a little awkward compared to Zero Mission. And in particular, when it comes to, I don't remember what the controls are exactly, but like the way you do angled shots in Zero Mission is a lot more intuitive.
Yes, it's awkward in Super Metroid compared to that.
Yeah. And so that does make it a little harder to get in the headspace of revisiting. But I just think like the map design, the secrets, the atmosphere is just so much stronger in Super Metroid. There's this one infamous aha moment that I don't want to go into because both of you may go to Super Metroid later. But there's this one like moment where you get stuck, and when you figure out how to get unstuck, it's kind of like mind expanding.
You can discuss it.
Yeah.
I've spoiled the story for myself.
It's fine.
Well, it's not a story beat thing. Like it's like an environmental puzzle kind of thing. So I don't want to.
Does this involve Kraid?
Anyhow,
Okay.
like moving on from the specifics. Yeah, in terms of like the feel in the hand, I don't think it's my favorite Metroid game. But like even though it no longer has the monochrome of the Game Boy, doesn't have the solid black backgrounds, it still communicates the like Geiger influenced horror vibe that I think the later Metroid games kind of lose. It's still really strong in Super Metroid.
Gotta love those SNES voice clips that it has too. It's all and like is it a computer voice or is it the same nerd? I want to know because it sounds like the same voice that you hear in Star Fox that you hear in Super Metroid. But I digress. So what's odd is that you have here Super Metroid. And then this big old gap before you get to Metroid Prime. And I believe that Nintendo, I think they were allegedly trying to make some kind of Metroid game for Nintendo 64 that just never panned out.
Am I remembering correctly that they were going to make Metroid Prime third person at one point, or that was a consideration?
Well, I mean, we can get to that in a minute when we're talking about Prime. But yes, there were a lot of different ideas for Prime before they actually got it done. Because
that really is the only thing that I wish were different about Metroid Prime. Now, granted, it's really cool and really unique having this first-person perspective, but Samus looks so cool in Metroid Prime that I wish you could see her. Because you can really you get these quick glimpses when you go in and out of the morph ball, but she looks so cool that it's almost a shame.
Well, we'll get to that. Like I said, let's talk about Prime when we get to Prime. But the gap I kind of want to talk about a little bit. Like,
you know, we can segue into Prime. I know Prime and Fusion came out at the same time. We could talk about them in either order, so we can take this as a way to segue into Prime.
Yeah, but I'm saying I want to talk about the gap a little bit.
Right, but the gap is part of the segue into Prime, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so
we can edit that out. Anyway, so what impact does it have that there was an entire console generation that didn't have Metroid? Like, because I wonder if my appreciation for the older games would have been better if I had an excuse to get back to them sooner. Because by the time you get to GameCube and Game Boy Advance, that's when I'm getting interested in the Metroid games. But then, like, it didn't compel me to really go back to the older games. Or I should say that when I did try to play them, I just couldn't get into the headspace. And, like, I wonder why they allowed so much time to go by with it. I mean, we were talking before the podcast started about how Metroid is still kind of considered that third pillar of Nintendo's, like, franchises. But, like, as time has gone by, it really has kind of evolved to where maybe it's more like it's Smash, Mario, Zelda as the three pillars.
Yeah.
And Metroid's just sort of perpetually left, uncared for almost.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it does feel more like no offense to Metroid fans, but more of a second stringer like Fire Emblem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like they've been talking about Dread, like maybe it propels the series forward in a way, but
not if it's a 2D game made by a Spanish studio, like it's not going to be that same kind of prestige, which isn't
I don't know.
Not to say it's not going to be good, but
my thing about it is it's like every time one of the games comes out, they're great. So it's like, I mean, maybe the sales numbers is all that matters, right? Because like when, what was the series? I mean, what was the game? It was Fire Emblem, the 3DS one. Awakening?
I try not to pay attention to Fire Emblem games.
Man, I'm forgetting. The 3DS Fire Emblem basically propelled that series to new heights. But all of the games have been good.
But it's not enough to be a good game, right? Just think about like the discourse that happened around Ocarina of Time, and then the discourse that happened around Breath of the Wild, the discourse that happened around Mario 64, and then Galaxy, right? Like you get, like it's been since Prime came out, and what year was that? 2002, 2003, something like that?
It was like 01 or 02.
Yeah. Like, it's been 20 years since a Metroid game has been, like, seminal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Super Metroid was seminal. Metroid Prime was seminal. It influenced so many other games. Dread might be good, but is it going to be, like, some kind of sea change compared to all the other, like, Metroidvanias that have come out since, like Hollow Knight, Guacamelee, blah, 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 right? There's been a ton of them. And Dread can certainly be a great game, but if it doesn't, like, it's just not going to have that kind of prestige if it's just a good Metroid game.
Yeah, like, it's just odd. Metroid's like this odd franchise, because, like, now, let's transition into Metroid Prime and Fusion. When you get to Prime, like you said, it is this seminal work, and, like, the hype for it is something I actually am conscious of, because at that point, I'm actually paying attention to Metroid now. And when it launched, man, like it felt so unique, And it's like to Angela's earlier point about not seeing Samus because it's, first person. I actually felt like Retro did a really good job of showing you Samus fairly often, even though it was first person. Because all the transitional scenes where you're on like elevators, they show you the armor. When you go in and out of morph ball form, you see her with the armor. And then there are a lot of cutscenes that also highlight what she's wearing. But, that doesn't quite compare to seeing the armor constantly. It's interesting. I feel like the first person works, but you are wearing one of the coolest outfits in all of video games, and they took it away for 80% of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, like, for one thing, I think it's incredible how Prime feels like the 2D installments, even though you are in first person. Like, it's that the sense of exploration, the atmosphere, is all perfect, and yet it's in a completely different perspective. Man, we could devote the entire episode to Metroid Prime. I love that game so much.
Yeah. So this was the first time that I put a pretty decent amount of time into a Metroid game. And I just think Samus is so cool in this game. But the music, of all of the things that stick out to me the most about Metroid Prime, it's the music. Really just beautiful stuff. Some of it is almost kind of sad. Some of it's like really intense, like Magmore Caverns. One of the most beautiful pieces is, I think it's called Inside the Crashed Space Frigate. And it's like, I think it's like underwater. And that's the point where they're like, you're in this crashed frigate, and you can see like the bodies of like the space pirates that are like floating around in the water, and just really impressive music. It's one of my most memorable experiences of that game. And nice little touches, like when Samus uses, I think it's like when you shoot off like a charged beam, and you get this flash of light, and you can quickly see it like comes and goes really fast, but you can see the reflection of her eyes in her own visor. Just like this really neat little touch. And this game just has so much of that. This like the loving attention to detail in the environments. The puzzles are really engaging. The environments are beautiful. I think it's like the Chozo Temple. It has almost this kind of like autumnal feel about it. Just a really beautiful game.
I think that what really stands out to me is that this is around the time that Rare departs. And Retro is this new studio that nobody's ever heard of. And I've always kind of felt like by the time Rare is gone and Retro comes in, it's sort of like when a team in baseball like trades a player and you're like, ah, man, you're like, I really like so-and-so. And they go to the other team and they suck. And then it's like, oh, and then the guy we got's really good. Oh, I don't miss you anymore. Like, I love Rare, don't get me wrong, but like, it felt like almost we got Retro in place of Rare, and then Retro just kicked ass from the second it started working. And like, yes, the attention to detail. I mean, I think that one of the most impactful moments for me playing games was, I mean, just getting onto the space frigate in the opening moments of the game is impressive. But when you actually end up on Talon 4, and then you exit the gunship, and it's raining, but it's like a very light drizzle. So you look up with the visor, and you're seeing the droplets hit the glass of her visor. And then if you shoot into the sky, you can actually see her energy beam getting smaller and smaller the further back that it goes. And like, again, these are details where like if you've been playing games from like the Xbox 360 era forward, doesn't sound like much. But if you're playing GameCube and like this is your first time seeing anything like it, it's burned into your memory. It's something I'll never forget. I think this game came out at Christmas, or at the very least I got it at Christmas. And I remember there was the GoldenEye incident in our family where I wanted GoldenEye badly. That was another one Nintendo Power hyped. And I got in trouble for playing GoldenEye because my dad didn't know that our aunt had bought it for us. And so, I was playing it, and then he comes in and he sees that it's like a shooter and there's a gun, and he's like, well, you're just walking around as a gun, and he was very upset, and so that was banned. So I was a little iffy on Metroid Prime, because I'm like, at that point I'm older, but I was still just like, is my dad gonna see this and get upset? But man, I remember sitting in my aunt's room on Christmas, and it's on the television, and just being blown away at how beautiful it looked. But yes, that intro is also awesome. You know why?
Why?
Meta Ridley shows up. Man, what a beast.
Yeah, this is the point at which I completely sour on Ridley. It's like, this guy again?
It's funny because the game is positioned in a weird piece of the timeline. I think it's between Super Metroid and 2 is when all of the Prime games are supposed to occur. So you're like way back in the storyline when this game's going on. So it explains why Ridley is not in his normal state because he's theoretically been blown up already, because he's roboticized. He has like robot parts bolted onto him, which is why he's so freaking cool in this one. But atmosphere, he pops up throughout the game, and every time you see him, it's like building and building and building to what you know is going to be a confrontation with him. Mm-hmm. Like when you get to Fendrana,
Drifts.
The Drifts.
Mm-hmm. Fendrana
At
Drifts.
one point, he flies over you, and his massive shadow is cast, and you just kind of wonder, does he know she's there? Mm-hmm. Like you almost think, I think he knows that Samus is there, and he's toying with her a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you can keep exploring. I know you're here. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I'm going to stop you. Mm-hmm. But, just incredible.
For me, I never really got that far into Metroid Prime. This was another one where, like, as I mentioned, I got to a point where I was trying to do something with bomb jumps, and it was just like, oh my god, I don't care enough. I can appreciate a lot of the technical details you're both talking about, but this is actually the point at which I don't like the look of Metroid games as much. I feel like it just kind of looks, I don't know, like more generically Halo-ish compared to being as exquisitely Geiger influenced as it was before. And I wish they would get back to that, but they're clearly not going to, because the subsequent Prime games don't get back to the Geiger thing. Other M doesn't get back to the Geiger thing.
2 kind of does. Metroid Prime 2. 1 definitely is basking in its technical brilliance and not as focused on the creepiness.
But even like, I've seen like Metroid Dread described as like Samus goes to an Apple store. It's just like, it's a very clean kind of design. It doesn't have the same organic, claustrophobic feeling of the older games.
Well, maybe Sakamoto's the blame. We'll get to him in a little bit. But another element of Prime that is worth mentioning is we talked about this in a recent episode about game design faux pas. But the way that a lot of the story in Prime is communicated to you through what you're scanning, that is another aspect of it that I like, because the game isn't bombarding you with cinematics. It has all these little computer terminals that Samus can scan, and that gives you lore. And the level of lore it's crazy. When I popped in the Prime trilogy and was like going through the first game, I was just astounded thinking, not only did somebody go through all this detail, but Nintendo let them. Because Nintendo's so picky about everything. But like, I'm reading all this information about every creature with this whole fake, this is what this creature does and looks like and what they exist off of, and that's just the creatures.
I mean, as long as it's just like Talon 4 stuff, I can imagine Nintendo being like, oh, that's fine. We just ignore Talon 4 in the future if we want to. But
even like with the Space Pirates, it's a little bit of like building with them. Especially the concept that the Space Pirates are afraid of Samus is one of my favorite things in all of video games. Because they talk about her with hushed reverence, like the Hunter. And it's like, she blew up an entire fleet, and now we're on the run. And it's like they will talk about wanting to defeat her, but they are absolutely like, she scares them. And it's a really interesting thing because like as the player, it's that sort of empowering sensation of like, man, I guess I shouldn't feel too scared because these guys are scared of me. Just brilliant. That first game. And then the connection to Metroid Fusion. So like not only do you get Prime, but then you get the next proper story installment in Fusion at the same time. And that game, I think, gets a little bit of a bad rap. It is more linear in the sense that you're directed, because you have the CO, which is Samus's computer, and it's helping to direct, where you're going. And, I think that's a result of years going by, and at this point, Nintendo's notorious for kind of holding everybody's hand. But, like, it's fascinating to me because Prime doesn't really do that. Prime does kind of tell you, this is how you can use this ability or that ability. But, it's not really
it's not even just about linearity, because, honestly, like, Metroid 2 is also fairly linear in its structure. But this comes up with the Final Fantasy series, too. I'm not going to dwell on this long, I promise. But, like, people complain about 13 being really linear, and people who defend 13 will be like, well, 10 was really linear, too. But the rejoinder to that is like, well, 10 did a better job of making it feel like you weren't being led along by the nose, you know? Like it's not just whether it's linear, it's how it's presented and how chained down you feel as you're playing through it.
Yeah, I guess part of it might be too because of the structure of it as a 2D game. Because like Prime, I'm thinking about, there are times where your AI in your armor is telling you seismic disturbance detected here, and it shows you on the map. But like the structure of that map is complicated, and it actually takes some work to figure out how am I going to get from here to there. And you are somewhat guided. Like it's not like there's so many branching paths that you'll never get to your objective, but the 2D games, it's a little different. I mean, for one thing, I think in Prime you can actually turn off your AI, so it's not giving you any of those hints. But ignoring that, I think in the 2D games, it's like, it's a square gridded map. There's only so many places you can go. So when it's telling you, go here, go here, go here, it really feels like you're being funneled into those points. But I don't know, it didn't bug me. And I found the narrative part of Fusion interesting. You know, Samus has had this physically debilitating thing happen to her where the I think it's the X-Parasite infects her, right? And then the Metroids, like there's some kind of like derivative from the Metroid that's used to heal her, and so she's in this more organic kind of armor. So like, oh, that's fascinating to me. And then you know, you want to know what's going on, that you know, with this creature that's chasing you the whole time. So here's the horror element coming back in, where you have the SAX. So the creepy, almost Spider-Man-like quality of Venom, where like, you know, Venom is Spidey's costume come to life. Well, the SAX is kind of like her old armor reanimated, and it's chasing you.
It's a cool concept. It's like instead of just sticking with Alien, they kind of switch over to Terminator, right?
And it's another play on like the dark Samus concept, but it doesn't bug me. Like it's different enough. And those sections of the game where you're getting chased by the SAX are so tense.
I think the SAX might be the most successful of all the otherwise tedious dark version of hero clones in games. It's really cool.
I find it interesting how you're put in the position of every enemy that Samus has ever hunted. She's now the hunted by her own armor. It's such a neat concept, having your own weapon turned against you.
And you get a feeling of what it's like, especially because specifically it's her.
Yes.
You truly feel the tables turn.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't like Samus's blue looking armor in Fusion. I really don't like it, but that aside, yeah, that game has some very successful tense moments, and the horror elements in particular really work in that game.
I like it as a continuation of the Metroid story of like, yeah, like, you know, she goes through this arc in the first few games of like trying to stop the mother brain of the space pirates who are using the Metroid, to trying to exterminate the Metroids, to like developing this relationship with this last Metroid. And then in Fusion, like literally being synthesized with a Metroid. I like that. I think like, yeah, the SAX is actually really cool. I do like the original armor more, but I do think the Fusion armor is good too.
I should say, I mean, I love the armor, whether it's drawn or not. Specifically, I love the pixelation of it. Because like the actual hand-drawn versions of the armor, they're cool to me. But the way she looks pixelated on the screen in this armor, I think she looks really neat.
That's actually kind of what I meant when I said I liked how her armor looks in Super Metroid. I like the way it looks in game.
Some of the creature design in Fusion is really good too. I think the creature is actually called Nightmare, and it's like this TV head with these long hanging arms, and it's like this oozing, dripping face, I believe. So creepy, and just, oh man.
But despite Fusion, liking where Fusion tries to like take the story and the antagonist, like I got bored of the game. I quit. Maybe it's not surprising that the guy who really got turned off by Skyward Sword's intro also does not like the more linear, relatively dialogue heavy Metroid game. But I didn't care for it. And so when I stopped bouncing off Metroid games at the bomb jump stage and went back and, completed Super Metroid and Zero Mission. And I tried Fusion, and I just that was the one that I just couldn't do it.
So from there, and I just like to point out too, will you ever get to a point again where you get two incredible games just at the same time like that? It's like double Christmas. But anyway, so then we move on to Metroid Prime 2. That game, I didn't actually beat that game until within the past 3 years, I think. That game scared the crap out of me for some reason. The atmosphere is even creepier than the first game. I think Metroid Prime is somewhat shocking in... It's not brutal violence, but the descriptions of violence as you're getting told how the space pirates are eviscerated and all these different things, especially in the space frigate when you're on Orpheon and it's describing how they all died. I can't believe Nintendo let that kind of detail get put in, and I'm glad because it makes it feel more real and impactful. But when you get to Prime 2, what are they called? The Guardian?
I have not played
the Galactic Federation. The Galactic Federation troopers. Those guys are just totally eviscerated by the creatures on the planet. And there's one scene where you enter this chamber and they're hanging from the ceiling because I'm forgetting. I think it's the Ing are the dark creatures. I forget what the creatures are that they were dealing with, but there's these bug creatures that the troopers were dealing with, and you're understanding the story of what happened as you're going through their little base. But
is that the one where their bodies get reanimated at one point?
Yes, and that's creepy too.
That left an impression on me. Talking about you mentioned the violence of Prime. Yeah, I mean, I had mentioned just a few minutes ago when you're inside the crashed space frigate and you're underwater and there's all these corpses of space pirates just floating around you. That definitely is not really something you see very often in a Nintendo game. Just walking around. I think you can even kind of bump into them, but there's just these floating bodies in the water around you.
This is the first game we've been talking about that I haven't tried at all, so I can't really comment.
You haven't tried it at all?
No, I mean, if I was going to play it, I was going to play the first Prime first,
I played very little of 2. I don't even know that I played any of 3.
So 2, I remember there was the demo disc before it came out. I can't remember what game came with that disc. I just remember one of my uncles let me have the demo disc. And it lets you go through a little chunk. And I think there's some retrospective stuff on the disc. It's been a long time since I've put it in. But that game, there's no denying 2 is inferior to 1. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly why. Some people talk about the difficulty of Prime 2. I don't think it was that hard of a game. I do think that before Metroid Dread was announced, I had written a piece talking about how this was the true Metroid Dread. I just felt like it's oppressive feeling. Because you have all the stuff at the beginning with the troopers and it's just dark, especially the music. It's intentionally dark. And then when you go into dark, the planet's called Aether, however you pronounce it. When you're in the dark world of that game, you are perpetually... It's interesting because you talked about the claustrophobia of Metroid 2 on the Game Boy. Metroid Prime 2 is claustrophobic when you go into Dark Aether because you're confined to these little pools of light where if you go beyond them, Samus is experiencing constant damage to her armor. So you are moving from point to point. Everything's dark around you, and there are moments where you're surrounded by enemies. So it's interesting because it actually plays against the feeling of exploration in the first game and a lot of the other Metroids where you have this whole dark realm, you're not as inclined to explore it because you can't, and eventually you get to the point where you have an armor that you're not getting hurt anymore when you're going into that dark world. But on that level, I think it fails a little bit.
Yeah, as you're describing this, I'm thinking I don't think I like the sound of this.
It's interesting. I eventually was like, all right, stop being scared, just play it. And I forced myself to play it. And I realized I had missed out on what was a really good game. It's not as good as the first, but it's still good. And then I think at the same time that Prime 2 came out, it was either the same time or close to it, we get Zero Mission.
Zero Mission was earlier the same year.
Okay. And amazing. I mean...
So we've all played Zero Mission?
Yes.
Have we all beaten Zero Mission?
No.
I've beaten it.
Okay.
Multiple times.
Yeah, for me, I do think Zero Mission, like for me, like I'm fine with that being the version of the original Metroid that I've played.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I need to go back and experience the original. Like it's a little less interesting to explore than Super Metroid. It feels like a not quite handholdy. That'd be overstating it, but there's a little less wilderness in its design, and I prefer Super Metroid to that. But I still think Zero Mission is really good. I just don't care for the like the finale
with the Zero Suit.
Yeah,
introducing the best part of Samus
man.
forever. Oh,
all right, yeah, maybe not, but. Yeah, I thought it was a really awkward finale. I think it should have just been you blow up Mother Brain and leave the ship and in there. I understand like they wanted to add something new to it, but like this weird stealth segment Metroid finale, doesn't work.
It should be noted that Zack really hates stealth segments and non-stealth games.
#bias.
Yeah, hashtag the one truth. It's like the stealth mechanics can be good, but they need to be like thoughtfully designed, and the game needs to be built around them successfully. And that's true of mechanics in games in general, obviously, but stealth I find particularly obnoxious in games that are otherwise not stealth games.
I loved that portion of the game.
Good.
I thought Zero Mission was really awesome. It's also my, the way I've experienced the first game. I think it does a really good job of expanding on the first game, modernizing the mechanics, and it's just, it's just really well done. I think a lot of people prefer Zero Mission to Fusion. I actually still like Fusion better than Zero Mission, but Zero Mission's like, it's like within inches in terms of, liking one over the other.
Oh, the one other thing I didn't like about Zero Mission was like there's like flashbacks or something about Samus's childhood with the Chozo.
What's wrong with that?
That's stupid.
Should also be noted that Zack doesn't like any quote-unquote unnecessary storytelling.
This is absolutely not true.
It's true.
This is not true. What about you, Angela? You want to talk about your feelings on Zero Mission?
I love the hand-drawn art. In fact, the first drawing I ever did of Samus was, I believe, based off of a piece of art from Zero Mission. I do prefer, of what I played of Zero Mission and Fusion, I prefer Zero Mission. I love the look of that game. I agree with Robert that I think that it really successfully modernizes a lot of the mechanics of the original game. And while I'm not ruling out ever going back to my NES Classics copy of the first Metroid and playing that, I would sooner play Zero Mission than that.
So this leads us then into Metroid Prime 3. Have either of you played that?
No, I don't remember playing 3.
Yeah, me neither.
So... Metroid Prime 3 is amazing. I am sometimes tempted to say I think 3 might be the best game in the series. I love 1, but 3, first of all, it's incredible looking. Like, that game was a Wii game, and I still put it in to play. I beat it the other day. I put it in and beat it because I bought component cables for my Wii. So I got to see it in crisp DVD quality for the first time. But even still... It looks amazing. The thought that went into the world design, the creature design, is just astounding. And then I feel like Metroid Prime 3 does a better job of what Skyward Sword tried to do. Because basically, Skyward was like, well, we don't have the horsepower to create a whole giant interconnected world. So we'll do segmented chunks of a world. Well, Prime 3 does the same thing. But it's so much more satisfying in terms of exploring it and traveling to the different points. Because in this game, you actually get to pilot Samus's gunship. Now, you don't actually steer it, but you get to go in, you get to be in the cockpit, you get to interact with different elements in it, and then you set, course to whichever point on the map you want to go to. So there's multiple planets.
Pilot is not the verb I'd use for that.
Anyway. So you travel to all these different planets, and they each have a fairly giant area to explore. The motion controls are so wonderfully implemented. Like, the precision of aiming and shooting is great. The grapple mechanic that's introduced. So you have the grapple beam in the first two where you can like swing across pits. Mm-hmm. This time you can take the grapple and you can use it to interact with aspects of the environment and enemies. So you can rip shields off. You can rip chunks of armor off. There's like armored plates that you can remove using the grapple. And it's this really satisfying like flicking of the nunchuck where you flick forward and then pull back. It's just incredible. And then you have, now the narrative is fine. It's a little heavily focused on like the Galactic Federation. And I'm not saying I don't like the Galactic Federation, but it's clearly just this generic space army. And Retro tries to make it a little bit more interesting, but it's still just the generic space army. And Samus is kind of more fully entrenched in it, in this adventure. But it's cool. You know, you're going and these phase-on meteorites have been like impacting planets and then like leaching out into the atmosphere, and that's what you're going to resolve. But Metroid Prime 3, I don't think it's enough credit. Like, it came out at the height of like, you know, the Wii era, and you had all the kind of casual games and stuff going on. I think to a large extent it's somewhat ignored as being as great of a game as it is. Because I remember people at the time reviewed it and were just kind of like, it doesn't really, It's like, no, this game's amazing. Like, and it does such smart things with the motion controls. And I think Retro even said that they were asked late into development to incorporate the motion controls. You would never think that was the case. They feel so natural. And then shout out to... It's
got to be easier to integrate into a first-person shooter, right?
Well, sure, but I mean, but what I'm saying is like, it's like, sure, just, okay, aim and shoot, but like all the other stuff that is added in, like they just went to town with it. But Ridley. So Ridley appears in this game.
Of course he does.
The cool thing is that they make you think that you're done with him early, because he shows up in the first mission at the start, and you have a fight with him, and then it's like, oh, okay, you're done with Ridley for this game. Interesting. But then you get towards the end, and he's one of the final bosses you face, and he comes just screaming like a bat out of hell, and that's who you fight. It's like the final one of the phase-on asteroids that you're dealing with. He just appears, and it's like, oh my god, he's still alive. Like, this is awesome. That game is so good.
So sick of Ridley.
Get over it.
Prime 4 is going to have steep competition if it's going to top 3. Just saying.
Glad you liked it. And Angela, you can't comment on Prime 3?
I cannot.
Well, that's fine. Unfortunately, though, I think this brings us to Other M.
Oh, boy. Man. There is this one part in Other M. I think you can't use your... God, it's like your power bombs? I think it's the power bomb. You can't use them because Adam hasn't given you permission. Just like, first of all, who? And second of all, when has she asked permission to do anything in this entire franchise? I mean, my God, Other M is just, I don't understand. Like, honestly, this is just me. This is just me potentially talking out of my ass, but it's just something that I feel. I think Nintendo, even though it's its own franchise and technically its own studio, in a way, I think Nintendo was jealous with what Retro Studios did with the Prime franchise. Robert and I have actually discussed this. I think they were jealous that a Western studio took Metroid and had the success with the Prime series that it did. And so they were like, well, we're going to give it to a Japanese studio who just took a dump all over it. I mean, like, it is just, I don't understand what they were thinking with M. I'm not saying M is total trash. It's not like there aren't some interesting things about it or that it doesn't visually look good or whatever, but it's just there's so many little story details, story elements, things about it that just, they kind of neuter Samus. They also, they focus on her femininity way too much to the point where it's awkward and bizarre and weird. It feels incredibly forced. Samus... There's that one scene at the beginning. She's sitting in a chair, and she's in her Zero suit. She's in the blue suit, and it's like this like weird like if I'm remembering this correctly, this like slow panning up from her feet and then past her legs and then like up her torso to her face. And I'm like, it just felt like, and believe me, I should say, I don't care about things like this. I don't find like quote unquote objectification of women offensive in probably 98% of cases. In this case, it just felt weird and creepy. Plus, I think it was Sakamoto who's like, because she has, oh, I forgot, they gave her a beauty mark in this game, which I was like, okay, whatever, fine. She has a beauty mark. Well, other characters do too. But then Sakamoto has to get weird and creepy about it. He's like, she has another birthmark, or another beauty mark, but only I know where it is. Like, what? Yeah, like,
yes.
Just creepy and bizarre.
There's a weird, like, it rankles because in the other games, Samus is the protagonist, the hero, right? Like, it feels like you're embodying Samus, you're playing as Samus, and then I haven't played Other M, but I've seen like video and commentary, and it seems like she's more like a waifu for the player.
Oh yeah,
in Other M.
Oh yes, very much waifu. And then, Robert was making fun of this earlier, but the way that she
almost like the player is supposed to be Adam instead of Samus.
Well, then there's like the talk of the baby, and just the way that she has this like very extremely stereotypically, feminized, motherly instinct towards the baby. Just God, the way that she talks it's so frustrating. But man, I don't know why of all of the things, the thing that sticks out to me most is that thing about, I can't use my whatever power bomb or missile or whatever because Adam didn't give me permission to do so. Like, good God.
Now, Robert, you were saying that Other M is your favorite Metroid game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all the other games can just go in the trash heap.
So maybe give your defense of Other M.
So, first off, I can't remember where I read this. I think it might have actually been a Nintendo Joe comment, or it was one of our writers, but somebody had talked about going to Japan and that they had a pamphlet that they had gotten from a game store, and it outlined like the history of all the Metroid games and completely ignored the Prime games. So I think there is some kind of jealousy or whatever towards those games because to me, it's reminiscent of when Sonic Forces and Sonic Mania came out. Sonic Forces was the next big, huge Sonic game, and I think Sonic Team made that one. And then Sonic Mania was like, the little side 2D game that there might have been an anniversary involved, I don't know. All I know is Sonic Mania kicked the crap out of Forces. I think not just in terms of quality, but even sales. And what was interesting about it is that Mania, I believe, is all Western devs, or was heavily made by Western developers. I know Christian Whitehead was part of it. And so it's like, I think sometimes there is a little bit of jealousy sometimes when Japanese studios are like, oh, look at this Western dev taking what we did and doing it better even. Because Sonic Mania is an incredible Sonic game. Well, the Prime games, it's not totally fair to compare them to the 2D games because they are different. I mean, just the production levels alone are astronomically different. But just in terms of a Metroid game, those 3 Prime games are astounding. And everybody knows they're astounding. And I think Retro really kind of took Samus and made that their character. So I don't know if maybe Sakamoto was almost like, I want to be the one to make the next, big Metroid game. Because before it came out, it was a big deal. Team Ninja and Tecmo, they worked on that game. They're the ones who helped develop it. And I remember people giving them crap as though it was their fault. I'm like, it's not their fault the game came out the way it did. The game functions fine.
Yes.
Because it's like, it's 2D, but Samus can kind of move, up and down in the environment. So it's like, think of like an old school brawler game where you're on a 2D plane, but you can move up and down that plane. That's the way you can move in this. And the camera moves around and pans. There's the weird tacked on first person shooting elements. So like there's some points where you have to aim the Wii remote at the screen to like shoot a missile or something. If you just take the gameplay of Other M I would give it like a B+.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. It plays fine. It looks good, especially for a Wii game.
Samus also kind of looks cool in her movements.
Yeah, she has this really it's almost like watching Ryu move. She has this really like aggressive forward march.
I was going to describe it that way. She has some almost ninja-like qualities.
Yeah,
in
it was I think some Ninja Gaiden developers that
that's
were
what I said, Team Ninja.
He said
but Team Ninja does other stuff too, right?
Yeah.
But so she's badass in the game, and there's even the melee attacks that they incorporated. So there's cool stuff, all the gameplay.
Yeah,
but it's so overshadowed by the dipshit narrative and the overly feminized take on Samus makes no sense. It's like this is Sakamoto's character, and you just kind of wonder, does he even get his own character? What is interesting actually is I feel like the limitations of older hardware probably prevented Sakamoto from showing us this version of the character that nobody liked, because this is who it is in his head. The person with the mystery beauty mark that only he knows where it is.
Yeah.
This was his version of her.
I was actually going to say, I find it odd that they went with this over the top, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, this highly feminized version of Samus and Other M, given that even in the original games prior to the Prime series, she is not. Like, yeah, you get the Justin Bailey where she's in her bikini or whatever, but she just isn't this feminized character really at all.
Frankly, it's the best, because it's not a feminine trait, but she's weak.
Yeah.
And she's generically female weak, you know? And you wonder, again, that might be how Sakamoto envisioned her, but the problem is that she ran away from him a long time ago. Because all of the games up to Super Metroid established this stoic, badass character.
The other thing
and then Retro is who came after Super Metroid.
But see, what I was going to say about Retro is, it's not like Retro made her masculine.
No. My point is that it's like Retro got her the way we all got her.
Right.
And expanded on it in this 3D environment.
Yeah, and for some reason, it was almost like Team Ninja looked at the way they designed her, like her physical character design, her personality, how she acts in the Prime series, and was like, that's too masculine.
Well, no, not Team Ninja, Sakamoto.
So isn't there...
Yeah, that sure. But my whole point is, like, it's almost like there's like this overcorrection going on in Other M that seems to be a reaction to how she was portrayed in the Prime series, but almost as though the Prime series like heavily masculinized her or something. It's like, but they didn't. Like, it's not like she like, even her armor in Prime, it narrows, it tapers at the waist. So even though she is like in this like, bulky set of armor, she still has a somewhat kind of feminized look to her armor. So it's not like she was like a dude. I don't know what in the world they were thinking with the direction they took her in Other M, but it's really jarring.
I got a question about what you guys have been saying.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me like the Prime characterization is consistent with the characterization from the previous games.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's still expanding on it, right? Like if the Prime games didn't exist and it went straight from like, Fusion, Zero Mission, Other M, that would be less discombobulated, right? Because you could just say like, oh, those are 2D games. There's not as much dialogue. There's not as much characterization. You could fill in the gaps to some degree.
No, I still feel like it still would have been jarring because
it's interesting because even Fusion and Zero Mission portray her the same as the previous games, which to your point, Zach, it's like the limitation of the hardware.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, think of this maybe from the perspective of Japanese players who might come to the games with a different... Because I don't know how Japanese audiences feel about Other M, but if they are, like, writing off the Prime games and they had... Maybe it's not just Sakamoto. Maybe it's a more common, like, Japanese conception in the absence of this other information of how they, like, headcanon characterized Samus. Maybe Other M is more consistent, at least. It's still... Look... Just from watching cutscenes of Other M, it seems jarring. But maybe if you scoop Prime games out of the picture and you have like an audience of people who grew up watching Japanese anime, maybe that is less.
Well, I would argue it would only be consistent to them if you took like probably external media into account. Because I don't know how many probably like endless manga series there have been that we've never even heard of that are in Japan that have Samus, and maybe this is how she acts. But I think if you're just going off the games, there's nothing in the games that really alludes to, oh, this is what she's actually been like this whole time. You know, she was actually crying when that baby died in Super Metroid. Like, it just, I think Angela said, you know, course correction. I feel like Sakamoto just was like very heavy-handed in like, they're not showing her right. She's supposed to be like this. And then the thing with Team Ninja, they're known for the, the Dead or Alive, the volleyball games?
Yep.
So they're known for Cheesecake. Like, I don't think it was an accident that they chose them because they knew they were good with the action games and we want Samus to look, you know, very attractive in this game. Because she's pretty in the Prime games, but, like, she's not, like, I don't know how to put it. Actually, it's interesting. I have this back and forth with a writer I know about Samus's portrayal as a bombshell. Because they were talking about, like, if they were to cast her in a movie. And this person was saying, like, you know, Kristen Stewart would be good, you know, to play. And I'm just like, no. I'm like, Samus is supposed to be, like, gorgeous. And then he was like, well, that's never really been established. I'm like, no. And I actually found somebody, I didn't do it, somebody else had done it. They took every version of her from the original game all the way up to the most current and showed, like, her out of her armor. Every time she's ever been out of her armor, she is shown with an amazing supermodel body.
Even in Smash.
Yes.
I mean, I should note here, I don't think there's anything wrong with portraying her as gorgeous. Like, that's totally fine. I think a lot of commentary around this today would say, like, there's some kind of problem with her portrayed that way. I don't have a problem with that. I don't even have a problem with Sakamoto wanting her to be beautiful in Metroid, in Other M. It's just the personality traits that she has, this weak, meek personality.
This is the thing.
Doesn't match.
This is the point. It's that she's a bombshell and a badass. And it's like, it's this contradiction that blows some people's minds. Like, I've seen fan art where Samus is, like, drawn, let's just say, not as a bombshell. I don't want to use a word and offend anybody. She does not look like a supermodel. She's drawn average, I guess is the word that you put it. It's like, no one averages in that armor. Like, that armor is enhancing. She's a freaking warrior, okay? She's a warrior.
She's like an Amazon.
Yes.
Because isn't she also supposed to be extremely tall?
Yes. So it's like Sakamoto took all that part of it, but then was like, yes, but she's not the badass. She's soft and this and that. It's like, no.
Sensitive.
Oh my God.
Does anyone know, I guess, maybe more generally, how Japan feels about Other M as a game? Or,
I don't know.
Like, not just Sakamoto's take on these games, but, like, Famitsu or Japanese audiences, how they feel about Other M, how they feel about the Prime games, because I wonder if it's like an entirely different conversation over there.
I don't know. I would actually love to know, because I mean, when that game came out, it didn't kill the franchise, but there was a hard reset after that. Like, they paused the series, and we didn't get anything again until that stupid. I say stupid, it's not a bad game, but the Federation Force game that came out on 3DS.
Yeah, we can skip talking about that one.
But they didn't do anything with Metroid for a while. And, I mean, I feel like Japan kind of sets the tone for everything that we're seeing with most of the franchises. So I feel like if they were happy with it, we probably would be seeing more of it. But the fact that the next time Samus appears and it's in the remake of 2... they could have continued to have this narrative aspect and shown her as this soft character, and they didn't. And then Dread does not seem to be doing it either. So I feel like there's two possibilities. The Japanese did not like it, or the international response was so negative that Nintendo might have just said internally, look, Sakamoto, we love you, but in this case, we're overriding you. She's going to be the other way. Because think about it this way, too. If you wanted to take the kind of, political view of it, the Western audience is basically saying, well, you turned her into a generic female character. And I think Nintendo might be thinking, well, we don't want anyone saying that we're being sexist or this or that. So even though this works in Japan and nobody cares and we liked it, we can't do it for the international audience. No more Samus like that.
I think, I don't know about that, but, clearly for Samus Returns, they gave it not, like they outsourced it. They didn't outsource it to Retro, but they did outsource it to a Western studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mercury Steam, which is based in Spain.
Mm-hmm.
So is at least, like, it's not just we've decided not to make like a weak damsel in distress characterization Samus. It's that it's not Sakamoto's presumably overseeing these games still, but
well, see, that's my thing. Like with the Samus remake, like Samus Returns, that's Sakamoto again. Mercury Steam developed it, but he was in charge of like producing because he's working with them to do Dread.
Sure.
And I really honestly think that the tone of the story and the portrayal of her, I think, went out of his hands.
But like they could have given the game to. Was it like Tosei? They could have given the game to some Japanese studio.
Mm-hmm.
They gave it to Mercury Steam. So that indicates like a willingness to like not stick by, like beyond just talking about like Western pop feminist sensibilities, there's also just like a willingness to step away from a specifically Japanese aesthetic when it comes to portrayal of characters if they're giving it to a non-Japanese studio.
I guess so. I mean, I think honestly, the way that Team Ninja rendered her in Other M, any studio could have done it. I mean,
Sure, but like culture matters. You bring people on board for specific reasons, and
I think that when it came to Mercury Steam, I know that the work they did on the Castlevania 2D game that they made is what drew the attention of Nintendo, because it, Castlevania, Metroidvania, whatever. Even though that game's not really a Metroidvania, truly. But anyway, that leads us to Samus Returns. So why don't you just get on with what you want to talk about?
Yeah, so Samus Returns...
This is the only reason we did this podcast today, by the way.
There's no. I do have things to say about other Metroid games. But when I was going through that revisiting period, like revisiting Super Metroid, playing through that, and... Zero Mission, trying Fusion again. What kicked that off was AM2R, another Metroid 2 remake, which is a fan game that like one Argentinian guy had spent 10 years making. That's
10 years?
Well, obviously he had like his own like actual jobs on the side, but like as a hobby project, this was a long-term project for him. And it's a remake of Metroid 2 that incorporates design ideas, design language. It brings it more in line with like the Super Metroid Zero Mission lineage. I think in terms of controls, it's an evolution of the Zero Mission controls. It has a lot of its own like really successful ideas when it comes to like area concepts. There's one really, I know neither of you are ever going to play this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know that.
I will not.
Well, do you mind me like spoiling a gameplay moment?
No.
There's a moment where there's like a reactor that's blowing up and you have to escape from an area that you're in. And there's a timer counting down, and the timer is like, it's not a number. It's kind of like a meter that's filling up, and the game language communicates to you just from playing it that you're going to die if you don't get past the double doors to get out of there by the time it finishes. And like, it's really frantic because it's like an escape sequence, but it's in the middle of a Metroid game, which is kind of a nice twist. You can't tell this as you're playing it, but it's rigged in your favor to seem like you're about to lose. But the progress of the meter is actually controlled by how far you're in there, how far through you are. So it's one of those things like the dynamic difficulty in Resident Evil 4 where like it kind of ruins it to know it, right? But playing through it, not knowing it, it's like, it's a really great pulse pounding experience. I loved AM2R. I'd recommend it to anyone, but yeah, I know neither of you have played it. You feel it's illegitimate because it's not an official Nintendo game. I really like what it does, and I've never played Samus Returns, the Mercury Steam remake. Not really any interest in it. I feel like AM2R is going to be my Metroid 2. Same way that Zero Mission is my Metroid 1.
Samus Returns is very good.
Good.
It
just tell me Ridley's not in it.
Yeah, I can't remember if Ridley's in it or not. I do know that when I played it, I beat it in less than 2 days. I couldn't stop playing it. It was interesting because I had gotten it. It took me a while to actually open it and play it. And then when I finally was like, all right, sit and play it, you've been putting it off, I was just like, oh, I can't stop now. It was super fun. I do miss the pixelated, graphics, because it's a 2D game, but the 3D rendering of everything looks really nice. And I just thought Mercury Steam did such a beautiful job with that game. And honestly, Sakamoto redeemed himself with Samus Returns, because I remember before it came out, there was a question of like, okay, what's it going to be like? Because Federation Force, which we won't linger on, but that was a first-person shooter. But you're playing in these kind of mech suits, and you're like Galactic Federation troopers, and it was this oddball game. What's the name of that studio? They're the ones that did Punch-Out and Luigi's Mansion 3. Level something?
I don't know.
Man.
We don't have to speak of Federation Force.
Well, I feel bad because they're a really good studio. That game's not bad, but when you get Samus Returns, it's like, okay, now we've got a new Metroid game and way better.
Yeah, we can say that at least these days. I guess we got to wrap up because this is already our longest episode. But we can at least say that Metroid is in a better state now than it has been for a while. Even if Samus Returns, like, people can have different feelings about like that counterpunch mechanic or various elements of the aesthetic of the game or whatever. But even if it's not setting the world on fire, it's at least like a solid Metroid game, which is something that...
Astounding Metroid game, thank you. And I'm sure Dread's going to be equally good.
Well, look,
Dread looks like it's going to be awesome.
Here's hoping.
And I would just like to say before we sign off, Metroid Prime Pinball is really good too.
Yes, it's a really fun game.
Good.
Rumble Pack.